Good morning, friends, and welcome to the Cold War Prepper. My name is Lee. Gosh, I want to share some really good videos or lives, well, one of each, that I have seen over the course of the last 2 days. Just superior. First, there was a live that was hosted by Van City Prepping, and she had on a plethora of EMT, combat medics, Jason, the angry prepper, Michelle Mitten, prepper veteran. I mean, just fantastic medical knowledge people, and it was a fantastic 1 hour live. I encourage you to go back and watch that live. Just, you get all kinds of great information. And they reminded me of something, and they reminded me, one of the speakers was talking about why in the military, for example, we always wear our individual first aid kit on our upper left portion of our harness, and upside down so we can reach for it ourselves. There are certain things we get into a habit of, and I kind of forgot, not that I've forgotten, but they become so instinctive that you forget to pass them on. And the other part of that was he pointed out that there's commonality, so that you open any soldier's IFAC, and if you know your own IFAC, you know theirs. We're not allowed to change them. Everything is standard, and that's so that you can immediately use their IFAC to treat them, and you know where everything is. And I gosh, that's a simple rule, and I forgot that. But when my bug out bag, I was using it as a get home bag because I was working about an hour and a half north, about 90 miles north, and it got stolen out of the back of my car. So I wanted something really quick, and I ended up with a relationship with Echo Sigma, and I started selling their products at my store when I bought a store. And I have their IFAC, and so it's a little bit bigger than probably we would have in the military, but gosh, the thought process of having to have everybody have it exactly the same so that you can use everybody's in an emergency situation is so critical. Thank you for reminding us of that. Then I watched about a 15-minute video from Goshen Prepping, and Eric Goshen, he's an ex-military doctor, and he gives a discussion about nuclear radiation and its effects and the things you can do to mitigate that, treat it, etc. And I think there's a left out portion here where everybody seems to be focusing on the radioactive effects of a nuclear detonation. And we forget that there's three, and Eric kind of got into it a little bit, but I would like to get into it a little bit more. There are three components of a nuclear blast. And so the first, you got the explosion, and that explosion causes three different things to happen. Number one, you've got the IR, UV, all that other kinds of stuff that Eric is talking about in his video, and that comes out and that causes burns. So if you're exposed to it, you're going to, and you're far enough away to where you don't get the immediate radioactive blast, you're still going to have some sort of burns, anywhere from first to third degree burns. If you're facing towards the blast and you're staring at the blast when it happens, you can go blind. It can burn your retinas. So, one of the things we have to take into consideration is for those people who survive the nuclear radiation and are further out from the blast, we have to be concerned with burn care. And then after the speed of light, so then comes the shock wave at the speed of sound, which is slower than the speed of light. And that's going to knock buildings down, throw people around, throw cars around, and everything else. So one of two things, or possibly both. Either it's going to throw you against something and you're going to have some sort of a concussion wound, or something's going to be thrown on top of you. There's also the possibility for a lot of puncture wounds, and of course, with the concussion wounds, you're going to have a lot of broken bones. So, the three things I think we keep forgetting to talk about when we talk about nuclear bombs is, number one, treat for burns. Number two is to treat for broken bones. And number three is you're going to have a lot of treatment concerning possible puncture wounds and tears and gashes and things like that. So some of the things I just want you to consider, these are things that I have in my first aid kit, bearing those in mind that you might want to add to yours. Number one, and this is what I get at our local grocery store, this is what I get at Walmart, but it's the same thing. It's a sterile saline wash under a little bit of pressure, so that if there is a wound, you can wash any debris out of it and everything else. You don't want to keep that debris inside the wound or in contact with the wound, so you want to wash that out. And then, of course, you're going to want some sort of a sterile dressing, usually, 4x4 gauze pad or 2x2 gauze pad or something like that. If we're talking about wounds that are burns, then we want to make sure that that's a non-stick gauze pad. So usually that's going to be a Telfa brand or something like that. We also want to, with punctures and gashes and rips and abrasions, make sure we have some sort of antibiotic, and this is a topical antibiotic. I also strongly recommend that you get oral antibiotics, get a full course of oral antibiotics, because if you've got that much of a wound, you're going to have to prepare yourself to take care of infection. So along with that, people talk about sutures and staple kits. I am opposed to both of those. Every time you either put a suture in or a staple, basically what you're doing is you're adding 2 more puncture wounds for every stitch or staple. Well, actually, for a staple, it's going to be 2 more puncture wounds for every one. I prefer either butterfly strips or these are called Steri-strips. These are kind of straight. These have a little bit of a bigger area to adhese on both sides. I've seen one that I want to get, and it's called a zip closure. So it's basically a piece of tape on each side of the wound, and then it's got these, think of them kind of like as circular zip ties that go into these little notches, and then you pull that so that it pulls the wound closed, and it's kind of Steri-strip and, what's that called? The zip tie. It's kind of zip tied together. I really like that because that's also a non-invasive type of a wound. Do me a favor, study. Get with a physician, get with an EMT, somebody. There are times you don't want to close open wounds, and I would tell you the secret to that, but I'm not licensed to practice medicine. I have the training from CERT and the Army and everybody else, but I strongly encourage you to get first aid training. Learn the difference between which wounds you close and which wounds you don't. Another fantastic addition to that is going to be to get some Israeli bandages. Now, a bandage holds the dressing in place. Now, Israeli bandages have both the dressing, a sterile dressing, and the bandage with it. Speaking of which, one of the best things that I keep a bag full of them here in the house is triangular bandages. Make sure you have plenty of triangular bandages. So, I like the Israeli bandages. These work very well because they have a compression bar on it you can use to add additional pressure to the wound site. Remember, pressure is another one of those ways where you stop bleeding. Now, when we talk about broken bones, you've got to get some SAM splints and have those in your first aid kit at home. These can be used either for the leg or for the arm, elbow, things like that. And then, of course, it's got the wrap. They call it, I think it's called Colex wrap, so that you can wrap it around and keep it in place. Finger splints would be fantastic to have. You can also go to the hobby area in Walmart, and they have both popsicle sticks and tongue depressors. And those make fantastic splints for fingers or anything like that as well. So, make sure you have plenty of splinting material available and something to attach it to them. These are padded, so they do have some styrofoam padding on them around the aluminum that you can form it to make it, so that makes it a little bit more comfortable, as if you can get comfortable with a broken bone. But over time, as it starts healing, it'll get more comfortable. So those are just some things I want you to take into consideration. Make sure you get plenty of burn cream. Have it available. I prefer with 4% lidocaine. I think that's the maximum allowable by law. But make sure you have plenty of burn cream that you can apply to any burn wounds. And sterile dressings, you want to keep those hydrated as well. It's another good reason to have. And this is a third type. This is Skintegrity Wound Cleanser. So I like this one. It's got a pump spray. So, just some ideas on some things you might want to add to your home first aid kit in case you're concerned about the effects of nuclear radiation, a nuclear detonation. And then I would encourage you to go back and watch Goshen Prepping and watch his videos on nuclear first aid. And I would also say go back and watch that 1 hour live, then city prepping, a lot of good information in that. So remember, we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Be kind, respectful, and polite to each other because togetherness is the key. Take care. Bye-bye.